So, are we ready to go? I know it's a long flight. It's a long flight, and then take your seats, fasten your seat belts, and be ready for takeoff. Uh, uh, mm, I just wanted to make a sort of feedback about your feedbacks. Yeah, my impression that people are overwhelming, too much information, too small breaks. On one hand, this is not good because people feel stressed, people feel sometimes tired. But on the other hand, it's such a massive piece of information. And my recommendation is that don't feel like that. So this is a big, massive body of the material you can watch later on several times. You can relate it to the readings suggested. So let's take it as a kind of bud of development. So it's a kind of starting point, orientation. You don't need to understand everything from the very beginning, because it took many years for us to come to this point. And of course, it's quite difficult to just to like a school children, like to try to remember everything which was said. No. It's more about giving a kind of panoramic vision of the situation and landscape, what we call cultural, historical, and activity theory, activity research. So take it as an invitation rather than prescription, okay? If you feel tired, if you feel that you do not understand, please feel free in interrupting us anytime, asking questions. So the idea is that we are not presenting to each other. I'm not presenting to David. David is not presenting to Andy. So we are trying to open different ways, different perspectives, different ideas to you, to us, to create a kind of shared vision of the things. Just to give you a kind of information you can then work later, coming back, rewatching the videos, looking at the presentations and looking at the slides, making readings, contacting us. As John said, all presenters, all professors are very accessible. We are very open. If you feel that you need something to support you, you can contact us easily. And the first point. And the second point is the idea of this school is that you meet each other, presenters meet, participants meet each other and establish your personal academic network. So you have a full list of emails of everybody. Please contact each other, keep relations with each other, communicate with each other. Because in 20 years, you will meet again and say, oh, we met first time 20 years ago in summer school. So we all have networks. We all have international networks. We have colleagues and friends. We are working together. Science is international. Science is about network, about the community of the researchers, not just individual researchers. So this is a great opportunity for the participants to start to establishing your own personal academic network. So content is important, but relationship, co-authoring is not less important than the content. And please do not feel sad when we are debating to each other, when we are arguing to each other. That's okay. That's okay. If there is an agreement, it means that you are dead. When there is no drama, no conflict, no contradictions, there is no life. So you can see the contradictions in action. Sometimes David disagrees with me. Sometimes I disagree with John or with Andy. But doesn't matter. We respect each other. We are researchers. We all understand that through contradictions, through debates and arguing, we are growing. We are keeping alive. So don't take it as wait. No. It's let's take it. Wow. Like this. Okay. Sorry, I had to say this just in response to the feedbacks. Okay, and now to the topic. And the topic I was asked to speak today, even being afraid that it's too much Nikolai in this summer school. Okay, but I hope it's not about that. I hope it's too much Vygotsky, which is not bad. So it's about the methodology, cultural, historical, genetic research methodology. And the reason for this presentation is very simple and very difficult. It is very simple because when we speak about cultural historical theory, look, I'm speaking about cultural historical theory again. I'm not speaking about activity theory. So when we speak about cultural historical theory, we should understand that this is not only certain theoretical construction, system of concepts, principles, and the laws, which I tried to present to you yesterday. This is only one side about what Vygotsky did. The second great contribution of Vygotsky to the science called psychology is methodology, new methodology or new research method he developed, he introduced, and the generations of researchers, we are still using this methodology as our research methodology. Why? Because as I tried to describe yesterday on Monday, the new subject matter of the theory, which is the process of development, of higher psychological function, new subject matter, new area of research, requires a new methodology. And ZPD, for example, is one of the examples. So instead of using traditional Binet or IQ tests measuring the results, ZPD allows to measure the process of development. So, of course, ZPD is not a research methodology, but this is an example of how we can change, refocus lenses on development. So, and the point is that as a researcher, if I consciously, deliberately, and consciously use cultural historical theory as my theoretical framework, if I take this as my theoretical framework for my research project, for my PhD project, for any kind of project, so I have no other choice. I have no freedom in selecting methodology. I have to use cultural, historical, genetic research methodology as a methodological part of my research, because these things go together. This is what differentiates cultural historical theory from many other theories in psychology. The theory and method are in complete coherence. And what I'm going to present, I will show you maybe in the first part of this section, the general ideas about this method. And then after the break, which you required after the break, I will show you several examples of my research and research of my PhD students of how their
8:32 now. Can we?
Lewis, we can.
That we need to.
Lewis, can you mute yourself, please? Okay. So, and after the break, I will show you several examples of the concrete research projects done by my PhD students, and some of them are Okay, some of them are not my PhD students anymore. Some of them are now my colleagues, but I think that's the idea of what I'm going to present. So, are you okay with this? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, these are the questions I'm going to discuss. What is the thing we call cultural historical genetic research methodology? How this methodology can inform educational psychological research? How this methodology allows us to make visible things which remain hidden for the traditional methods of child development? And what are the tools and principles and ways to analyze the development process in its complexity? Because as we all remember, the process of development is the process under study. We are focusing on not on the fruits, but on the process. And finally, how this genetic research methodology works. And well, just a reminder, I'm sorry for self-promotion, but these are some publications related to the topic. And I will speak about some of these publications today, but if you are interested in how to use this methodology in your research, you can just read out and then contact me. Well, I'm sure nobody here is afraid about the word genetic here. Okay. Cultural, historical, genetic research methodology is not about genes, it's not about biology, it's not about the physical traits which are inherited, it's not about biological stuff. Genetic research methodology, the word genetic comes from the word genesis. I'm looking at Andy now, saying that it's Latin or Greek, doesn't matter. Genesis literally means origin and development. Okay, so for us cultural historical people, genesis means social cultural development. So, and not only for us, because if we take Piaget, and Piaget called his theory, what is the title or what is the name for Piaget theory? Genetical epistemology. So the word genetical is quite widely used. Okay, so but I would like to start from the traditional studies on child development. How traditional psychology or traditional studies on education, how they considered child development. I just want to show you something which might look familiar for many people, especially those who are dealing with early childhood education. Oh, yeah, this is just from the textbook. You see, this is a kind of matrix which gives information about the important milestones in development, domains of development, and what the child should be able to do at each stage, fine motor skills, social, emotional, self-help, expressive language, and so on and so on. This is quite typical. This is a traditional, typical picture of measuring, of studying the development using the ideas of milestones, stages, and ages, and all these things, which is very important for practical workers. And I'm not criticizing this. I'm just showing you this is one of the ways of looking at what development actually is. And this is from another textbook, very nice picture. And what is written here really makes me very sad. So that growth refers to increase in physical size of the whole body. and this is a quantitative change. But development refers to progressive increase in skill and capacity of function, and this is a qualitative change. I just want to stop myself interrupt. What do you think about this? What do you think about this lovely division between quantitative characteristics and qualitative characteristics? Would you agree or disagree? And does it look confusing, or you completely okay with that? Any ideas?
I think that's really good, Nikolai. I like the one about development too, where you've brought in capacity of function. I like the way you've split it up between the two. I think it's very useful.
Okay.
I mean, one of the questions here is about the measurement. One is about they're using quantitative in the fact that they can actually do measurements of height and weight.
Yeah.
Whereas the kind of measurement tools are available for what they're referring to as development here. So I think what they're really differentiating is not so much whether it's growth or development. I think they're differentiating on the basis of how they are observing or let's say measuring. Because I think an observation is a measurement.
Yeah. Okay. Any other ideas?
My favorite part. Oh, sorry, Valerie, you go.
No, I was going to say you go.
My favorite part is I can almost see people chopping the child into the pieces. I'm going to study this piece of the child or that piece of the child.
Yeah.
And my comment was, I think the whole discourse is unfortunate, because what about developmental growth?
Yeah.
I'd like to chuck in, I think there's a problem where they talk about development referring to progressive increase in skill and capacity of function. It sounds as though it's a single function improving as opposed to a new function.
Nikolai, is this a textbook for beginning teachers, beginning early childhood?
Yeah.
And I think it's that idea of simplification of ideas, that in simplifying they get categorized into parts that are not necessarily correct, simply to make them digestible. It's the stuff of misinterpretation and misconception.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no more comments?
Can I ask a question?
No.
I'm sorry, but it seems to me in 4 years, according to the graphic, the child is staying in his own foot. It seems that
too late.
Staying up. Thank you, David.
It's too late. Yeah. Okay.
But
yeah.
4 years. That's an observation. Just
Yeah. You see, well, it might look that to study development, the process of development, as a research question, it's quite easy. You're just using two types of measures. First is quantitative. You are just measuring grams, kilograms, and kilometers, and so on. And the second is you can measure through observation, but I still have no idea what does it mean to measure through observations. How can I measure through observations? But it doesn't matter. So it means that it's quite clear and quite easy to follow, quite easy to understand model which dominates because it's easy. So, but the message from Vygotsky, the telegram or WhatsApp message from Vygotsky is that Anytime when you come to the problem how to study, how to make a research on development, you have to answer the question, depends on what do you mean by development. If by development you mean just growth and increase something, this is one understanding of development, which means that every change is a development. If something changes, you can call it development, that's it. Or if you understand development as a complex dialectical process which is characterized by many, many features and aspects. The first aspect is a complex periodicity. The second is disproportion of the development of separate functions. The third is metamorphosis. And metamorphosis is a term coming from Hegel, if I'm not wrong. Andy, I think I'm right? Metamorphosis is Hegelian, which is qualitative transformation of certain forms into others. Complex merging of the processes of evolution and involution. A complex crossing of external and internal factors. So, and the process of overcoming difficulties, contradictions, and adaptation to the new conditions. If we understand development dialectically, which means this way, it's obvious, it becomes obvious that such kind of things, reducing development only to change in child's body or change in child's functioning is not the approach which might fit these characteristics. In other words, what I'm trying to explain, what I'm trying to say, that there is nothing bad here and there is nothing bad here. It's all okay. But if we really want to focus our lens on development, we have to take as a starting point that development is the process which is much more complex than it might look on the surface. So the analysis of development should take into account, should take into consideration the dialectical character, the dialectical nature of development in general, and dialectical nature and dialectical character of the child development in particular. So it is not easy to make a research on child development if we understand development dialectically. It is not easy just measuring kilograms and measuring through observations. Not enough. How then?
Nikolai, could I jump in and ask you to expand on your use of the word dialectically here? And it is possible you're about to do that, because I think this is one of my tick lists. What do you mean by dialectic development?
Well, it's not about what I mean. This is a quotation from Vygotsky.
Indeed. Point.
Yeah. So it's from volume 4.
Mm-hmm.
Might be a difference between what I mean by dialectics and what Vygotsky mean by dialectics, but just to make it very short. So the dialectics is the method, the general method of thinking which comes from Hegel. it's associated with, of course, dialectics has a prehistory before Hegel. Dialectic originated in ancient Greece in different forms, but the culmination of the dialectics as a philosophical method comes from Hegel. It's absolutely impossible to explain dialectics in two words, but there are two ideas of dialectics. First idea is that the idea of contradiction. So the contradiction as a moving force of development. When there is no contradiction, there is a car without the engine. Okay? You have a luxury car, but there is no engine in the car. You can only look at the car, and that's it. So contradiction, but contradiction is not like a formal contradiction. There are two contradicting processes coming at the same time, and the two contradicting processes create a kind of moving force for development. This is the first idea of dialectic. Andy, sorry, I have to oversimplify it. So, and the second point, important point for dialectics is that development, dialectical understanding on development includes that not the transformation, but metamorphosis, just a qualitative change of something. For example, okay, coming back to my example, the bud, the flower, the fruit. So the bud becomes the flower. This is an absolutely qualitative change. Is it still a bud? Somehow yes, but it is not, because it's a flower. Again, when the flower is changed into the fruit, we might say it is a new quality, it's a fruit, but this is a fruit which comes from the bud. So there are qualitatives. That's what that's what Hegel and Vygotsky called metamorphosis, which is not the same as transformation, because transformation is just a transformation of the existing parts of something. Darcy, do you remember the movie called Transformers?
Yes, indeed.
Transformers. Everybody knows Transformers. Why Transformers? Because they are Transformers. They are characters. But why they are Transformers? Because they can transform the same parts of the system into the kind of robot, and then back to the car, right? So, yeah, am I right, Darcy?
Yes, yes.
So, but look, this is just a mechanical transformation. It's only changes the form, in the form of the car, or the same in the form of the robot. That's why transformation, changing the form, but the same parts, the same particles, the same components. But Hegelian metamorphosis, reorganization, means that there are new parts appear in the system, new parts, new organs which did not exist before, and therefore the system changes. Okay.
Very good. So
these are two aspects of dialectics of development, and in child development, we also have to find the contradictions, contradicting coexisting processes in child development, and how at certain time child's mind, psychological functions are coming through the process of reorganization, how new functions appear which did not exist before. This is what the dialectics of development is. Okay.
Fantastic. My original thinking about thesis, antithesis, and synthesis was lacking, in the sense I had not fully appreciated the difference between transformation and synthesis. So transformation and metamorphosis, and in particular in overcoming a new problem. So there's a fundamental reorganization. Thank you very much. That's very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to finish this, and I know we have a Hegelian expert among us, Andy, and I'm always feel little bit afraid touching this territory. But what I wanted to say is that in Hegel's philosophy, one of the ideas is that there are two types of systems exist. Two types of system. The first type of system can be labeled very generally as a sort of mechanical systems. They are just combination of several parts, like an engine in your car. Okay, look at your car, the engine. So they are interacting parts of your engine. They are connected with the wheels and your car moves. So this is an example of mechanical system when all parts are related to other parts and in a very mechanical way. So, and you can improve your car, you can make a tuning of your car, but it will be still the same car. Okay, and the only future of your car is getting older, and therefore it's getting cheaper. But if you keep the car for 50 years, you can then sell the car for millions of bucks. So this is the only way. So this is a mechanical system. And the second type of systems is organical, or Hegel made a different terminology, but let's call it organical. They are not biological. They are organical systems. For example, society or the family is the example of the organical system. So these systems are able to generate new organs from them. They are just producing the new organs. And through producing new organs, they are reorganizing themselves. For example, tree. So you put a seed, then a tree grows, and tree begins to create the waves and then the leaves. So this is an example of organical system, which is growing system. So which grows in a very different way as your car is changing. The car cannot generate its own parts from itself, okay? The only way to improve your car is you come to the car and take the old parts and put the new ones. This is the only way. And the tree grows. Family is another example. Our families. So when I got married, I'm expecting a new part of my family to appear, and my son and daughter is that wave. Okay, so in society, and there are many examples. So, and that was one of the greatest contribution of Hegel into understanding of how system grow, how system develops. And dialectics is a logic which helps us to understand how organic systems develop. You don't need dialectics to understand how your car is operating.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
But you definitely need a dialectical logic to understand the laws, the universal laws of development of every organic system, being it to the tree, your body, because this is also an example, or your family, or the society. And now I have to ask you, what do you think child's mind, child's consciousness, is this a mechanic system or organical system?
Organic.
Yep, absolutely. That's why Vygotsky says that we have to completely change our method of analysis of the process of development of the child, because this is a completely organical system. That's why it is a complex dialectical process, which includes periodicity, disproportion, metamorphosis, evolution, involution, merging of things, overcoming difficulties, which means overcoming contradictions, and adapting to the new conditions. So yeah, I apologize, Andy. I had to be very narrow, because it takes a lot of time to get into the dialectics, and well, sorry for simplification of that. Okay, so Can I continue, or we are having a break now? John?
It always helps if I turn my microphone on, doesn't it? We started a little bit late, so I think we'll go on for a little while and then break perhaps in about 15 minutes. Okay.
Okay, perfect. So, how then? How can we apply this to us? Because we are researchers. We need some, how to say, we need some practical research tools to be able to disclose these aspects. And that was the task. Vygotsky said that this, he said in several different works of Vygotsky, we can find he repeatedly, systematically repeating the same thing. This thing is that psychology needs to find a new method how to apply dialectics. We have to find the ways how to apply the dialectical method to psychology. So psychology needs a dialectical method. So you can find it in several Vygotsky's works. That was one of his tasks, the challenges he experienced. And there was nothing done before Vygotsky came to psychology. And his task was not only to create a new theory, but also to create a new method, which is able for me, a researcher, to open, to unpack, to disclose, to clarify the complexity, dialectical complexity of the process of development, coming from registration of empirical manifestations to the analysis of the hidden logic which generates these phenomena, from descriptive methods to analytical, from the questions how it looks, to the question why it looks this way, why it does not look that way. Sorry, am I too complex, or it's okay? Can you follow? Good. Okay. That was a challenge for Vygotsky, and together at the same time with creating cultural historical theory, because cultural historical theory was not just invented in one day. It took several years of experimental studies, of analysis and internal conferences to develop the concepts. At the same time, Vygotsky's task was to introduce and to test and to try to apply a different method of experimental research of the process of development of higher psychological functions. And this is the second contribution of Vygotsky to the science psychology, which should not be forgotten. So, and this is what was the task, and the answer to this challenge is what I identify as genetic research methodology, where genetic means not biological inheritance, but cultural, social genesis. And why it is genetic research? Because as a genetic research, it gives me as a researcher a very strong and powerful tools to organize the experimental settings and the tools to analyze the data I obtain. And this is genetic research methodology, because it shows that the theoretical tools of analysis, concepts, and methods, principles of setting and conducting of experiment are related to each other. So this is methodology, not in the sense of America, when methodology is just a number of techniques or concrete methods you are using. Here, methodology is the unity of experimental tools and theoretical tools, because theoretical tools are concepts, but the concepts are not just general ideas. Concepts are the tools we use to analyze the data we obtain. On the other hand, there are experimental tools, and I will discuss these tools today, which helps me to set up the settings, to conduct the experiment, to collect the data, and then to analyze the data. So I want to show the unity. And if the researcher only takes some concepts from Vygotsky and use separately, and the research is done absolutely in classical traditional way, this might be okay, great, but it just takes one part from the Lexus and trying to incorporate this to your old Ford, which will look very nice, but we will not make Ford even better. So that's my idea. Okay, and again, Vygotsky. This is from volume 4, and somebody is reading volume 4 at the moment? Good. And it's volume 4, chapter 2. You see, the method we use may be called an experimental genetic method, in a sense that it artificially elicits and creates a genetic process of mental development or psychological, I think. Due to this, we are able experimentally in the laboratory to elicit a certain development. What does it mean? What do you think it might mean? Are there any words here confusing you? Honestly, there is something here which confuses me, but I want to know, what do you think? Do you need a minute or two to think over? Welcome. Megan, look, I'm with you.
I would like to tell something that I think the word artificially is something that could be confusing, because when studying development, we think that all we are creating theoretically is something that we see in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that theory is not about reality, but about how can we manage concepts in empirical research.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe thinking about artificially is something that could be make some confusion.
Perfect. Ana Luisa? Perfect. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Now communicate with your brain. If your brain is still able to communicate after two extensive days, but maybe there are some parts of your brain still active. I hope. Okay. No more comments? Very strange. Such a great... No, not from John, but from the participants.
Okay.
Sorry, John. Priority is given to the participants. I think you don't mind.
Even to me, artificially, it's the strange word, because in my understanding of the critics that Vygotsky moves to Pavlov was that they they create and they force the reality, making some construction with the experiment. If I remember this idea, Vygotsky take this idea from Goethe, that you say that the nature, we can ask the nature to say the truth under torture, like something like that. So artificially, to me, could be understood like something that we force the experiment, the natural development or the natural process. For this reason, I consider that a little bit strange.
Okay. So, as I see from our participants, that the most confusing word here is artificially. Okay, and I need to comment about that. So I agree, Anna. I agree, Diego, with you that traditional science, when we are doing experiments, prohibits the experimenter to participate. The experimenter should be totally withdrawn from the process, not to intervene to the process. Otherwise, the process goes not in its natural way. Okay? So it was the demand before the intervention started to be practiced. But intervention is an intervention. Intervention is that when the researcher is intervening, so bringing something. So this is the point. For Vygotsky, that was an extremely important point, that experimenter should artificially, specially create certain situations for the child when the child begins to act in certain way. So this is more than intervention. This is an arrangement, a special preparation, a certain situation for the child when the child begins to act, and at the same time we can observe how the child is acting in certain challenging situation. So, but this is not the complete point. The point is with the word artificially. But let's stop for a while. Let's think a little bit philosophically about the distinction between natural and artificial. What's the difference between something is natural and something is artificial? What is the criteria we distinguish natural processes from artificial processes, or natural conditions and artificial conditions? Let's think collectively about this, because we quite commonly use the word child's natural settings, natural settings of the child, or artificial intelligence, or stuff like this. But what is the criteria we distinguish natural processes and artificial processes? Any ideas? Ask your...
maybe... Nikolai.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, the problem with this paragraph and what you have raised lies in the first part of it. It's this before our eyes. I think there's a time factor, And when you try to do something in an artificial environment, you are changing the dynamics of time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's legitimate.
No.
You can infer something from it, but it's just a snapshot. It's not necessarily what is.
Mm-hmm. 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 Very, very good point. Thank you, Luz. Okay. Who wanted to say more? Isabella? Was it you?
Yeah, I was going to say that maybe we can relate artificial to something that like is not made or is not from nature, but made by man. And sometimes, I don't know if in English and other languages there is something like this, but in Portuguese sometimes this can have like a bad meaning, like something artificial could be something not so good. Yeah, but then I don't know if in English there is this sense.
Okay.
But when we read this, we have to like try to forget this.
Yes,
this
connotation.
Yeah.
Isabella, can I ask you something?
Yes.
What Brazilians think about artificial intelligence? Is it bad?
No. But like, if I don't know, if you say that someone is like doing something, I don't know, that is artificial.
Yeah, artificial, yeah.
I don't know.
So this is not natural, which is abnormal somehow, yeah? Okay, this is very, very interesting to know. I didn't know about that. So, okay. Anybody else want to jump into discussion?
I think it's kind of complicated because in this sense, you're talking about separating this person or group of people from the context that they would normally exist in and putting them into a different kind of context that you're constructing. So it's to do with, I guess, how much intervention you have. But to an extent, all research is intervention. Even if you just sit and observe in a class, you are changing what happens because you're there. So I guess it's about how much you intervene to change what exists in that situation.
Okay. Okay. So now my next question is, if you take culture in a general sense, culture, not in a national or ethnical, culture itself as a human production, is culture, literature, art, theater, architecture, is it natural or is it artificial?
I think it's artificial.
Absolutely artificial things. No reason to say it's something natural. Trees, rivers, grass, sky, clouds, sun, sunrise, sunset are natural processes. But theater, drama, Shakespeare, Hamlet, when we pay a lot of money to go to see the Hamlet, so this is absolutely artificial because the theater was built by humans. The piece Hamlet was written by the human called William Shakespeare. The language it was written is also not natural because the language was created by generations of people. Okay, the paper on which it was published is artificial. Okay, absolutely. So every cultural environment. Look around you. Everything around you was created. Is it your natural environment? Yeah, it is your natural environment in the sense that this is your typical normal environment, in the sense that you know this environment, your room, it's your favorite study or whatever. But Is it natural in the same sense as the grass and the trees and the flowers and the lakes are? Of course not. This is all artificial. So, and this is what Vygotsky means by using the word artificial here, saying that social environment and cultural environment, cultural tools we use, which mediates our activities, they all are artificial devices. They are artificial tools. They are artificial pieces and products created in the course of cultural development of the main kind. And all higher psychological functions, therefore, they are also artificial. They are not the results of our natural development. They are internalized social relations, as you know. Because they are not the results of the development of lower psychological functions. They are coming from outside. They were social before they become individual. But the social is artificial. When we speak to each other, making a social event, this lecture or this summer school, we are using language which is not as natural as the grass and the trees and so on. And we are using internet, which is absolutely artificial. We are using computers. We're making notes. Yeah, I'm looking at Valerie, who's now making notes using absolutely artificial things, because the symbols, the Latin alphabet, I'm using Cyrillics, is artificial because it was not appeared as a part of the nature from grass, trees, clouds, sunshine. Yes, it is a product of the human history, of the cultural history of the humanity. So, and if as a researcher I want to study the process of development of higher psychological functions, there is no other way for me rather than to create specially created artificial situations when the child has to have a challenge and trying to use the artificial cultural tools to overcome this challenge. This is what artificial means here. And what we, using common sense, call natural environment of the child, we do not mean the grass and the trees around the child. We mean his everyday, usual, artificially created environment, which he or she accepts as natural. Okay, what do you think? Is it now a little bit clearer?
No, not so much, because because if you are right, why Vygotsky don't use the word that like tools and sign instead of artificial? Because he use a synonym to express the role of cultural signs.
Yeah, but cultural signs are not natural as trees and grass are. Cultural signs are signs which were created previously, or the child creates artificially. Huh? Please, Diego, make a little bit effort just to move so that artificial is what belongs to the culture, and natural is something which belongs to the nature. That's the point.
Yeah, yes, it's enough clear.
Okay.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So now I'm coming to Lewis' comment. Lewis, you are very right saying that the process of development just undergoes and goes through changes just in front of our eyes, or so before our eyes. But it might take a long time for the process to go. For example, it might take a lot of time to see how child develops his or her speech or language, using David's terminology, but I prefer to call it speech development. But David, being a strong and very famous linguist, saying the language development. But okay, so and it might take years, right, to see the whole process of how the child develops speech from autonomous speech to internal speech at the top. But as a researchers, sometimes what we can do, we can create a special conditions which just will start to generate this small change, which might happen in a real situations. But in the laboratory, we make it like, we are creating such a conditions which reproduces the conditions of the real life and generates the development. And then making this, we are making observations of this, and then we can describe the process. So we are just condensing some moments in experimental settings. These moments might take longer time in so-called natural environment. But what we are doing, we are just trying to make a kind of sort of condensation of this in one shot period. So small micro developmental micro change can be we are not sitting and waiting when the change will happen. We are creating the conditions that the change happens. Okay, so now I think everybody needs a break. Yeah, and I have, how much time I have? Half an hour after the break. Sorry, John.
Helps I turn my microphone on. Yeah, half an hour after the break. Let me see, we've got 29 people here. So if we put that into, I'll put you into 10 groups. No, 9 groups. Okay.
Okay.
9 groups. Assign automatically. You have 5 minutes, and I'll summon you back automatically in 5 minutes.
Okay,
Good.
I don't know what you discussed in your breakout rooms, but we had a very interesting discussion with Melissa and Ishrak. So, as I said, cultural historical theory was not developed in one day. The same about method. There is a history of developing, of improving the method in Vygotsky's life. So this general genetic or experimental genetic method was started from the very specific, very concrete technique, which is called technique of a double stimulation or dual stimulation. That was the first stage, and Vygotsky published about that, and that was a stage of developing this concrete technique. From 1924, approximately, to 1927. It was the main method of experimentation Vygotsky applied. And the idea of dual stimulation is that the child has one stimuli, and then to operate with one stimuli, the researcher provides the second stimuli, and using the second stimuli, the child is doing so. This is the dual stimulation, and I think Annalisa will tell you a lot about dual stimulation, so I don't want to touch this. But what I want to tell you is that very soon, as cultural historical theory was developed, very soon Vygotsky improved significantly and radically improved this technique of double stimulation into the whole general experimental or experimental genetic method. And technique of double stimulation was only a small part of the general method. And Vygotsky did not say anything about dual stimulation in his writings after 1928, because instead of technique of double stimulation using stimulus response or two stimulus, two responses, or mediated response, he rejected the idea of stimulus and response as being too Pavlovian to explain the human behavior and development through CR, stimulus response model. He replaced this with the principle of mediation, sign mediation. So stimulus was not anymore considered as a stimulus of first stimulation or double stimulation. It was significantly improved to the idea that instead of stimulus, we have to use the sign, because stimulus does not give me any opportunity to understand, to study development. One stimulus or two stimulus does not open, does not disclose the process of development. But the transition of the child from non-using sign to using sign as a tool gives me opportunity to see development as a process. So therefore, the sign was not anymore seen as external stimulus or second stimulus, the principle of signalization, but related to the activity which distinguish humans from animals. Because he says, what distinguishes humans and animals is the activity of signification, that is creation and use of signs, cultural signs. So there was an evolution in Vygotsky's vision of the role of stimuli, from very simple and very Pavlovian idea of dual stimulation at the beginning to the idea of this principle of signification, when the humans are using or creating a signs which then become their internal tools, and stimuli first or second never is to be able to become a tool. So it was an evolution. The same as theoretical evolution, it was a methodological evolution. Okay. Coming back to dialectics, because that was a question. So,
sorry, Nikolai, I think you forgot to share the PowerPoint. I don't know if.
Huh? Sorry?
You forgot.
Ah, yeah,
forgot.
sorry. Oh, yeah. I'm just looking at my PowerPoint.
So it's an help for me for the language.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's the PowerPoint I was speaking of. It was started as a very concrete technique of double stimulation, and then it was developed, incorporated as a general experimental genetical method. And since the principle of mediation appeared, Vygotsky, in fact, rejected the idea of double stimulation as being unable to discover the process of development. And a sign was not seen as a stimulus at all. Never mind, first stimulus or second stimulus. The sign is much more than the stimulus, because the sign becomes the tool, the internal tool, external tool, internal tool. So, okay. And coming back to dialectics, if you look on the process of development from the dialectical perspectives, there are several important aspects of dialectically important aspects of the process of development, which includes the sources of development. So traditionally, sources are not included in the process of development. But if you look dialectically, we can say that, okay, to understand the process of development, we first have to identify the sources, and which is the contradiction as a moving force and the source of development. Then the character of development. The second characteristic is the character. Character is the transformation of quantitative changes into qualitative. So metamorphosis is a characteristic of development. Moving forces are the contradiction, direction of development. So dialectically, development is not just development, it's just directed. And there is a law of the negation about it. So every type of development has specific features, specific characteristics. The development of society has specific characteristics, which is different from development of the child. Of course, there are some common features in every development, but so, okay. So, and then the results of development is also an important aspect. So, and I speak about this very briefly because it's too complex and too theoretical. But the point here on this slide is that dialectical understanding of development means that we have to focus our research on one of these features, on the sources or the character or moving forces on direction also. It helps me to orient. And there are two sides, cultural historical theory as a system of tools, theoretical tools, and experimental genetic method as a system of experimental tools, instruments. And all this together creates what we call genetic research methodology. So methodology is not here on the right side. Methodology is what unifies theoretical tools and experimental tools in one big methodology. So now time to show you some examples how the method works. This is the example from the book, and I highly recommend to read. I think it's free. You can find it in internet. Studies on history of behavior.
Yeah, it's on marxist.org.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Andy. Okay. So this is one of the concrete examples of experiments which Vygotsky and Luria present in this book. And there are many more examples in that book. That book is very interesting because they are giving a lot of information about the concrete experiments. So, and this is the example of the forbidden color game. Forbidden color game. And this experiment was designed to investigate the development of cultural form of attention. Cultural form of attention. When at first the child does not have cultural form of attention, which means that the child cannot control his attention, cannot distribute his attention, because his attention is very limited, it's very natural, lower, higher psychological functions. And how the cultural form of attention appears. Forbidden colors game. Okay, series A, the child is given a row of colors, and experimenter suggests to play the game with the child. And children are always happy to play the game. Said, okay, the game is this. I'm asking you questions, you give me answers. Then you ask me questions, I give you answers. Okay. And the questions are like, what color snow is, what color the sky is, what color the grass is, what color. So, and they are asking questions to each other, but there is a condition. There are two forbidden colors, If you say forbidden color, you lost the game, okay? So, and forbidden colors are white and black. And they play. Child asks question, the experimenter responses, and backwards. And child always lose the game. Every time child named the forbidden color. And this is a kind of unpleasant situation for the child, because child wants to win, but every time loses the game. And then the experimenter says, do you want to win the game? Do you want to know the secret how to win the game? Child says, yes. And the experimenter said, okay, let's take these two, black and white, separately from the rest. And before you answer, please look at this, black and white, and answer only after looking at this, black and white. What happens here? Black and white colors moved up are a kind of external means the child uses to be able to master his attention. Before answering the question, look attentively on the forbidden colors and then answer, or do not answer, because if you do not answer, you not lose the game. So that's the second part of the experiment. And then, can you imagine, after this, the child begins to win. Why the child begins to win? Now the child can distribute, can control, can organize his attention using absolutely external tools, which are only two cards, black and white. And at the final stage of the experimentation, when, for example, green color is prohibited, when the question comes, what color the grass is, do you know what child responds? He says, yellow, when it's autumn. What happens here? The child does not need black and white to be in front of him anymore. The child has it in his internal attention, but his cultural attention now works together with his thinking. He stops giving wrong answer. He begins to think, and he begins to find the right answer, but not with forbidden colors. And then he gives the answer that what color the grass is? Yellow, when it's autumn. So this is a kind of example of Vygotsky's experimentation, how cultural attention might be created, how through these external tools, through internalization of external tool, the child's attention is not just an attention, it begins to cooperate somehow with other psychological functions like memory and thinking. Okay. Are you still with me? And in this small experiment is an example. We can find all five principles which underlie every type of Vygotskyan experimentation. These principles are five. The first principle is the principle of the buds of development. So what does it mean? It means that to make display to make display possible, we cannot take the children, the toddlers, for example, because they're not interested in cards. Remember what Andy said yesterday. So we need to find the children at the stage when they have quite developed natural attention, but they are ready. Their cultural attention is in a bud stage, in the sense that it's ready to go. And how to identify this is that we are suggesting the game and we are suggesting the tools. If the child can use tools together with the adult at the first stage, so this means that his or her cultural attention is at the bud stage. It just needs a little bit of movement to be internalized. So the principle of drama is the second one. So this game is a game, but there is a dramatic moment in this game, because what is the dramatic moment? Dramatic moment is when the child cannot win the game. He's losing the game all the time. He loses the game. And the winner is always an adult, and the child personally experiences this as a kind of dramatic situation. And only after that, the hint, the idea, the tool is given to him to be able to use this and to start winning the game. So this is a kind of small dramatic moment when the child is involved. Then the principle of interaction of ideal and real forms. I will come to this a little bit later if I have time, but I think I do not. So the ideal form is a developed form of behavior, developed form of behavior. For example, they play the game and win. This is the ideal form. But the present form is playing game with no idea I'm going to win or lost. So the child never knows how the play goes. So at the moment, at the beginning, but at the end, the child is making sure that using these two forbidden colors, he will win the game, because he knows how not to lose the game and how to win the game, because he has internal mental tools to organize his attention before saying the word, the color, think about, is it prohibited or not? Or if it is prohibited, how to say another color which is not prohibited, but which correctly answers the question. And finally, the principle of developmental tools are these two cards. And sustainable results is also important principle, because it says that once the child reaches the level of being able to use internal tools, it means that the child's attention is now developed, and he can be successful not only in this particular play. The child is in principle able to regulate and control and organize his attention in his real life situations, because he has internal tools, internal resources to organize and to distribute his attention, not only in experimental settings, but in real life situations, in play, learning, or whatever. So, and the results are sustainable, which means that results will not disappear. So there is a qualitative change. There is a fruit of development, which will never get back to the bud stage. This will be the fruit for forever. Well, wow, my time is over, nearly over. I don't know what to do. I just wanted to discuss some examples of my PhD student studies, but I think maybe it's enough by now. John, what do you think? I'm very sorry. I was sure I have enough time.
You've got another 8 minutes.
Well, doesn't help. Okay, maybe we can spend this 10 and 8 minutes for, again, the discussion. And maybe during the next session, you can give me half an hour or something to show the examples from the studies, because it's practice to theory to practice. I think it will fit there better.
I think it'll be good. Yeah, it'll fit very nicely there.
Okay.
Okay, so open to some comments, questions.
Oh, chat is full of.
So your discussion between all this and various things.
Oh. There's a lot of discussion in chat, but sorry, maybe I will read later. Now, please, any.
Yeah, it'll be there all day.
Mm-hmm. Nothing to say? Oh.
I can guarantee you at least half of everybody else here, including me, will have it.
What about people bring up some of the things that they discussed in their 5 or 6 minutes, or a question, or
That's a good
a
idea.
learning?
I'll jump in with one. It was really interesting for me to see how the genetic research method, the metamorphosis we were talking about earlier, how that idea of these qualitative changes is coming from the cultural historical, the beginning of the cultural historical field, and has moved all the way through. It's almost, to me, is almost like the unifying concept. That was really interesting.
Yeah, I agree. This is one of the unifying concepts, yeah. And I hope you could see from the example that there is really a qualitative change from using natural attention with no devices to keep this attention, to using consciously using internal tools which can help the child to regulate his attention and switch on attention before answering.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Darcy. You've got the point clearly. So nice to hear.
Can I maybe ask about the card game, which I hadn't read that example before, so thank you for sharing. When you said that none of the children got this, got it, and they all lost, that intrigued me because there's such diversity amongst children. Were there no gifted children, or children with competence in problem solving, or different kinds of thinking in the sample?
Yeah. But Valerie, I just use this as an example for the typical children. The way how the experiment is organized, just to show you that there are some requirements for specially created conditions, because these all are specially created conditions, because the forbidden game, colors game, is a special created condition. The cards are specially created. So, and this just to show the illustration, how the experiment was done in order to identify the process of development, of transition of the child from non-cultural forms of attention to cultural forms of attention in specially created conditions. Of course, all children go this process from involuntary social attention to voluntary attention in real life. But this is a kind of condensation. It's like in chemistry. In chemistry, the chemical processes are going all the time, everywhere. But researchers in chemistry, they take these pieces, bring to the laboratory, and make a kind of conditions when the reaction happens. Why? To study the mechanisms of this reaction in especially created laboratory conditions. The mechanism is the same everywhere, but in the laboratory, what you can do, you can just create a condition, you can generate this reaction, and then you can reproduce this reaction so many times with so many elements, if we want, to find the regularity in all these things. So it's absolutely the same story. Then to find the regularity, to find a pattern, the mechanics, we have to create special conditions and then do experiments, not with one child, with different children.
Thank you.
We can take 100 children and play the game with them. But you will see that in every child, the process of transition from natural attention to the cultural attention is the same. That was the idea of Vygotsky, how to make a research on this process of reorganization, metamorphosis, transition from natural to cultural. But of course, if your task is to look how different children might be involved, this is a different research question. and you have to rearrange this experiment in such a way that it will give you information about how the different kinds of environments might affect the child's forbidden colors game and why different children are playing this game differently. Or you can make a comparison about gifted children, how they play the game, and non-gifted. I'm not sure there are any non-gifted children, but however. So you see, it gives you a lot of opportunities to modify this general idea into, depending on your research questions. But don't forget, for Vygotsky, that idea of that experiment was to discover the patterns, to discover the regularities, to discover the laws of the transition from natural forms of behavior into the cultural forms of behavior. Our task is not to discover these regularities. Our task, because they are already discovered, our task is to look at how they work in different situations, in different cultural backgrounds, with different children. Might be children with special needs, for example. Okay, what are the specific ways of transforming, transition from natural to cultural with children with special needs? Maybe we need different tools. Maybe they are limited in these tools, but we can replace the tools with the others. You see, so this is the kind of field of research depending on the research question. But what I'm speaking is that the organization of the experiment looks always like this. First, we are creating some conditions, and then we are together with the children, because this is more than intervention. Yeah, it's a participation. At the first, we are participating together. Yeah, and then the child is able to solve the tasks alone. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, it was a very long answer, but I just wanted to clarify the point.
Okay, it's gone past, and if we're going to get our half-hour desperately needed R&R before David takes over, you will get to hear some more from Nikolai later this afternoon when we have our kind of portmanteau session. So that will be at 3:30. So you're not going to completely do without your Nikolai fix.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll let you get away and get a bit of break. And at 1 p.m. we'll be back for David.
Hi. Nikolai, just before you go, look, thank you for informing me that Vygotsky stopped using the term stimulus after 1928. I hadn't picked that up. But I know in something I wrote recently, I kind of apologized for drawing the arrows in the wrong direction, coming from the subject to the object, whereas stimulus implies that it should go from the object to the subject. So that's interesting for me. Just the other thing to mention to you, and not to try and bite into too much of this needed break.
No problem.
I don't know if you're aware, but in the very substantial introduction to Hegel's encyclopedia, it's about 60 pages. The theme that he writes on, which makes the foundation for his entire system, is the principle that the relation between the subject and the object is not immediate, it's not mediated, it is both mediated and immediate. And he criticizes various figures in the history of philosophy for claiming either that knowledge, relation between the subject and object is only mediated, or it's immediate. He says no, that this either or thing is a big mistake. It is both immediate and mediated. And that's so important because Hegel doesn't see culture as a barrier between human beings and nature, but in fact, it makes the connection.
Yep. The bridge, not the wall, but the bridge.
So you perceive both the object and the sign, and it's the two together that is the characteristic of cultural psychological activity.
Yeah. I just want to respond to your response is that, he didn't even stop using the word stimulus response. He wrote in many places, I can send you the quotations, and he was very critical to applying any stimulus response model to understand the development. He was saying that Pavlov-based stimulus response model is not adequate at all. And
so he doesn't deny stimulus, but doesn't make it the foundation of his model, which Pavlov does.
Of course, on physiological level, stimulus exists, a stimulus response. If you touch something hot, even without knowing Pavlov, you react. But he denied. He said that it does not explain the development. It does not. It is not. It is not a matrix. It's not a method of explaining the development. Because once he focused his lens on development, he rejected stimulus response model at all. It explains quite well the actions, but it doesn't explain the transition from.
I've held us all up from lunch. I'm getting hungry myself. I'll let you go, Nikolai. Thank you for that quick exchange.
Thank you, Andy, for supporting me. It was very important